They were already inside my house when I realized something was wrong. Not breaking in, not sneaking, not planning. Their voices floated up the stairs in careful whispers, measured, controlled, confident. The kind of voices people use when they believe the person they're discussing can no longer hear, understand, or matter. She won't notice, Adam said. I know, Livia replied. She never does anymore. I lay perfectly still in my bed, eyes open in the dark, listening as my own children decided my life without me. My ceiling fan turned slowly above me, counting time like a clock that had stopped caring. She forgets things, Adam continued. She pretends she doesn't, Livia corrected. That's worse. A pause, a chair scraping, a breath held. We can't wait too long, Adam said quietly. If she signs something on her own, we lose everything. Lose, not me, not our mother. Everything. My fingers tightened against the blanket, not shaking, not weak, steady, too steady. The kind of calm that only comes when the truth finally stops hiding. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I let them believe I was sleeping. People think old age makes you fade slowly. They think the body goes first, then the mind, then the voice. What they don't realize is that invisibility comes first. Downstairs, footsteps moved toward the door. Keys jingled. A lock clicked. Their car engines faded into the night. Only then did I sit up. My heart wasn't racing. That terrified me. Earlier that morning, everything had looked normal. Sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor. The kettle hissed softly. I poured tea into the chipped blue cup Henry always said tasted better simply because it was ugly. The house smelled like lavender and old wood and time. And yet something felt wrong. Not loud wrong, quiet wrong. The kind that waits. At exactly 9:17 a.m. The phone rang. Adam, he always called at the same time, as if I were an appointment squeezed between meetings. Mom, he said warmly, too warmly. How are you feeling today? Not how are you, not did you sleep, not are you lonely. How are you feeling was never about me. I'm fine, I said. Just made tea. Silence. Papers shuffled. And you remember your appointment tomorrow, right? There it was. I remember, I said. He laughed softly, the patient laugh people use when indulging someone they've already decided is slipping. Just checking. When the call ended, I stared at the phone longer than necessary. Once, he used to stay on the line just to hear my voice. That version of my son had quietly disappeared. 30 minutes later, Livia walked in without knocking. She never knocked anymore. Mother, she said brightly, already moving through my kitchen, I brought those vitamins I told you about. Her eyes scanned the room, not at me, at the furniture, the cabinets, the oak cupboard Henry built with his own hands. Inventory. I've been thinking, she said lightly. Have you considered moving somewhere easier? Easier for who? I asked. Her smile hesitated. The house is big, she continued. Too big for one person. Perfect for two. I said. Silence. That was the moment I understood. They weren't afraid of losing me. They were afraid of losing access. When Livia left, the house felt hollow. I sat in Henry's chair and pressed my hand against the worn leather. They're circling, I whispered. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel old. I felt alert. Let them think I'm fading. Let them think I'm confused. Let them think they're winning, because I know something they don't. I'm not forgetting. I'm watching. That night, lying in the dark, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. They weren't waiting for me to die. They were preparing for me to disappear while still alive, and tomorrow they would take their first real step. The next morning arrived to quietly, no storm, no warning, just pale light slipping through the curtains like it didn't want to wake me. I lay still for a moment, listening to the house, breathed the soft tick of the clock, the groan of old pipes, the familiar creak of wood settling under its own weight. Everything sounded normal. That was how I knew it. WASN single quotes T. I dressed, slowly, deliberately, not because my body demanded it, but because my mind did. When you feel the ground shifting beneath you, you don't rush. You plant your feet. You feel where the cracks are forming. At 8:43 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Adam. Just spoke to Dr. Hawthorne's office. We'll handle things tomorrow so you don't get overwhelmed. I read it twice. We'll handle things. I hadn't asked them to. My appointment wasn't until the following afternoon. I had already written it down, twice, on paper, in ink. But the message wasn't about scheduling. It was about something else. Ownership. Ie. Didn't reply. Instead, I made my tea and sat at the kitchen table. Steam curled upward, fogging my glasses for a moment before clearing again. I watched it closely. How something warm can disappear so quickly if you're not paying attention. By mid-morning, Livia arrived. She knocked this time. That alone told me something had changed. "Mother," she said gently, stepping inside. Her voice was softer than yesterday. "Careful. Adam mentioned you seemed upset." Upset, there it was. The first lie is never dramatic. It's small enough to slip past unnoticed, polite enough to sound reasonable. "I'm not upset," I said. "I'm aware." She smiled, the practiced one. "Of course, that's not what I meant. It's just, you seemed confused about a few things yesterday." "Confused about what?" "Exactly." She walked into the living room without waiting for me, her fingers brushing the bookshelf, the picture frames, the edge of the mantel. "Agin inventory, you forgot the appointment time," she added lightly. "I didn't." "Well," she said, shrugging gently, "Adam said you did." There it was. Not a direct accusation, a relay, a passing of responsibility. If the lie was questioned, it could always belong to someone else. I watched her closely then. Not as my daughter, but as a person telling a story she hoped I'd accept. "Why would he say that?" I asked. She hesitated. "Just long enough." "He's worried," she said. "We both are. Memory changes can be scary for everyone." "For who?" I asked again. Her smile thinned. "Mother," she said softly, "we just want to help, but sometimes helping means stepping in before things get worse." Worse. That word carries weight only when someone wants it to. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the pear tree Henry planted all those years ago swayed gently in the breeze, roots deep, trunk solid, still standing. "I don't need stepping in," I said. "I need honesty." She sighed, as though tired by my continued existence. "You're being defensive," she replied. And there it was, the second brick laid neatly atop the first. Defensive becomes difficult. Difficult becomes unstable. Unstable becomes incapable. By the time Livia left, the house felt colder, not empty. I sat at the table and pulled a small notebook from the drawer beneath the stove, the one no one ever looked in. I opened it and wrote carefully. "Today, Livia said I was confused. I was not. Adam says I forgot. I did not. Not because I was afraid of forgetting, but because I knew soon they would claim I already had." I closed the notebook just as my phone buzzed again. A voicemail notification. Adam. His voice came through calm, steady, rehearsed. "Mom, we're just trying to protect you. Let's talk tomorrow with the doctor. Together. The word sounded like a promise. It wasn't. That night, as I set the notebook back in its hiding place, one thought settled heavy in my chest. They had started rewriting my reality. And once a lie is written down by someone else, it doesn't stay small for long. The doctor's office smelled like disinfectant and old paper. A clean smell. A trusted smell. The kind of place where truth is supposed to matter more than tone, more than family, more than feelings. I arrived 15 minutes early, the way I always do. Early is not a habit of forgetful people. It's a habit of people who don't like being rushed into decisions they didn't ask for. The waiting room was half full. A young couple whispered excitedly over an ultrasound photo. An older man slept, with his mouth slightly open, his wife's hand resting protectively on his arm. I sat alone. At exactly 11:04, the nurse called my name, not loudly, carefully, as if volume itself might confuse me. I stood on my own, no hesitation, no wobble. I noticed the way her eyes followed my steps anyway. Inside the examination room, Dr. Hawthorne flipped through my file, brow slightly furrowed. He smiled when he looked up, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Margaret," he said, "how have you been feeling?" That question again. "I'm well," I answered. "I sleep. I eat. I remember where I am." He chuckled lightly, as if ease in tension. "Good. That's good." Then he cleared his throat. "Your son called." There it was. He mentioned some concerns. I felt it then. Not fear, not surprise. Confirmation. The quiet click of something sliding into place. "What concerns?" I asked. Dr. Hawthorne scanned the page. He said you've been forgetful, agitated, that you accused him of trying to interfere with your things. I stared at the small sink in the corner of the room, white, spotless, untouched. "So," I said slowly, "he told you a story." The doctor shifted in his chair. "Families worry, Margaret, especially when they notice changes." "What changes have you noticed?" I asked. He hesitated. That was answer enough. "Doctor, I continued, my voice steady. May I ask you something honestly? Of course. If someone repeats a lie often enough especially about an older person, at what point does it become fact? He didn't answer right away. He studied me instead. My posture, my words, the space between my sentences. Do I seem confused to you today? I asked. No, he said finally. You seem lucid. The word landed like a small victory I hadn't known I needed. The exam ended quickly after that. My vitals were good, my memory tests clean. I left with paperwork that said nothing was wrong. Outside, the wind cut through my coat as I reached my car. Before I could start the engine, my phone buzzed. A message from Livia. The office called. They said you were upset again. We need to talk. Again. They were moving faster now. That evening they came together. Adam first, Livia right behind him, like they'd practiced the timing. They didn't ask how the appointment went. They already had their version. We're worried, Adam said, standing in my living room, as if he belonged there more than I did. The doctor said you were defensive. No, I said. He said I was clear. Livia smiled gently. One good day doesn't mean everything's fine. I looked at them both. When did my clarity become negotiable? They talked about care, about support, about paperwork, about preparing for the future. Every word sounded reasonable. That's how traps work. I listened. I nodded. I let them speak. Because while they believed the lie was walking freely now, they didn't realize something else had started. Moving to something quiet, something patient, something ready. Rehook. End of part 3. As they left that night, Adam said one last thing, almost casually. Next time, we'll make sure someone else is in the room. And I knew then, the lie was no longer just being told. It was being documented. Sleep didn't come easily that night, not because I was afraid. Fear has a sharp edge, a frantic energy. This was different. This was awareness, the kind that keeps your eyes open even when your body is begging for rest. I lay in the dark, listening to the house settle, every creak suddenly sounding like a question. Next time, we'll make sure someone else is in the room. Adam's words repeated themselves over and over, slow and deliberate. He hadn't said for support. He hadn't said for fairness. He'd said it the way people announce a decision that's already been made. Someone else, a witness, an authority, a version of the story that wouldn't belong to me. By morning, I knew I couldn't afford to wait anymore. The house felt different when I walked through it at dawn, not wounded, not threatened away, as if the walls themselves had realized something had shifted. I climbed the stairs without rushing, my hand gliding along the banister Henry sanded smooth decades ago. At the end of the hall was the small study, no lock, never needed one. I closed the door and sat at the desk. Sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, illuminating dust in the air, like suspended time. I opened the leather notebook again and reread every line. I'd written dates, words, tone, patterns. This wasn't confusion, it was coordination. I picked up the phone and dialed the number I'd written months ago and hoped I'd never need. A calm woman answered. Porter and Wells, legal offices. My name is Margaret Grace, I said. I need advice. There was no drama in her response, no surprise, only professionalism. We can see you tomorrow morning. When I hung up, my hands didn't shake. That surprised me. That afternoon, Livia called. Her voice was softer than usual, careful in a way that felt strategic. Mother, she said, we'd like to stop by tonight, just to talk. I almost laughed. We've been doing a lot of talking, I replied. Yes, she said quickly, but this is important. Everything was important now because time was running out. They arrived just after sunset. Both of them. Adam didn't sit right away. He paced the living room, glancing at the stairs, the cabinets, the hallway like he was mentally mapping the house. Livia sat neatly on the sofa, hands folded. Mom, Adam said, stopping in front of me. We spoke to a specialist. I said nothing. A social worker, Livia added. Someone experienced with cognitive evaluations. There it was. Not yet an accusation, an assessment. She may stop by soon. Adam continued. Just to talk. In a room with no lock. You didn't ask me, I said. We didn't want to upset you, Livia replied. Surprises can be difficult at your age. I felt something settle deep inside my chest. Not anger, resolve. When I asked, Adam blinked. Tonight, of course. I nodded once. Bring her in. That wasn't the reaction they expected. The woman who followed them into my living room was younger than I thought she'd be. Clipboard in hand, neutral smile, observant eyes. "Mrs. Grace," she said, "I'm here for a wellness check." For whose wellness? I wondered. She asked simple questions first. My name, the date, where I lived. I answered without hesitation. Then she asked, "Do you feel safe living alone?" I looked at my children before answering. "Safer than I do with pressure," I said. Her pen paused. "Do you manage your finances independently?" She continued. Double quotes. "Yes." Adam shifted. "She's been misplacing things." "What things?" I asked. Silence. The social worker looked up sharply. "One last question," she said carefully. "Has anyone made you feel uncomfortable about your decisions recently?" "Yes," I said. My children. The air changed. The woman closed her notebook. "I think that's all for tonight," she said quietly. When the door closed behind her, Livia turned to me, her voice tight. "You didn't have to say that." "Yes," I replied. "I did." Later that night, standing by the window, I heard their voices outside, low, urgent, careless. "She's sharper than we thought," Livia whispered. "We need to move faster," Adam replied. And then she said something they didn't know I was close enough to hear. "If she changes anything legally, we're finished." I didn't step away from the window right away. Their voices drifted through the night air, thin but unmistakable, the kind of whispers people use when they believe distance is protection, when they believe walls and darkness are on their side. "If she changes anything legally, we're finished," Livia said again. Finished, not hurt, not confused, finished. Adam exhaled sharply. "Then we need to push harder." The word lodged itself somewhere deep in my chest. Not painfully, decisively. I waited until their car doors shut and the engines disappeared down the road before I moved. The house felt different now. Not tense, focused, like a breath being held on purpose. Upstairs, I opened the notebook and wrote every word I'd heard. Slowly, carefully. Ink doesn't argue. It doesn't reinterpret. It simply stays. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks because doubt was gone. The lawyer's office the next morning was smaller than I expected. Modest, quiet, the kind of place that valued listening more than speaking. Mr. Porter shook my hand and gestured for me to sit. "You're not the first," he said gently, after I'd finished telling him everything, "and you won't be the last." I didn't know whether that comforted me or broke my heart. He explained things clearly, without urgency, without fear, a trust, a medical directive, a power of attorney that didn't belong to my children. "Once these are filed," he said, "no one can override your decisions unless you choose it." I signed without hesitation. My hand didn't tremble. On the way home, my phone buzzed, nonstop, calls, messages, increasingly sharp in tone. "You're avoiding us. This is getting serious. You're making things worse." I didn't respond. That evening, they came again, this time with a folder, thick, organized, confident. Adam placed it on the table between us like a final offer. "These documents simplify things," he said. "If you sign, we can manage everything for you." Everything. I opened the folder. Power of attorney, medical control, financial access. And then the last page, inheritance restructuring. There it was, the truth, no longer hiding behind concern. "So this is what all of this was for," I said quietly. Livia stiffened. "Don't make it sound ugly." "It is ugly," I replied, "because it's dishonest." Adam leaned forward. "If you don't sign, we'll have to involve the courts." There it was, the threat, finally spoken aloud. I closed the folder and looked at them really. "Looked. Thank you," I said. They froze. "For what?" Adam asked. "For saying it clearly," I replied. "Now there's no confusion." I stood and walked to the cabinet by the fireplace. Henry's cabinet, the one they always watched. Inside was an envelope. I placed it on the table. "What's that?" Livia asked. "Proof," I said. They opened it, and everything they believed they controlled slipped through their fingers. Rehook. End of part 5. Adam's face went pale as he read the documents. "You did this already," he whispered. "Yes," I said calmly, and in that moment I watched the power leave the room, not with a scream, but with silence. They didn't speak right away. People never do when the story they've been telling themselves collapses all at once. Adam stood frozen, the envelope still open in his hands, eyes moving back and forth across the pages, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something kinder if he stared long enough. Livia sank slowly back onto the sofa, her posture perfect, her face pale and tight. like porcelain about to crack you. You did this without telling us, Adam said finally. Yes, I replied. The room was quiet except for the ticking clock on the wall. Henry bought that clock the year Adam left for college. It had never missed a second. Funny how some things stay reliable when people don't. This can't be valid, Adam said, his voice rising. You were influenced. Someone filled your head with ideas. Someone reminded me I still have a head, I said calmly. Livia stood abruptly. You don't trust us. I met her eyes. You made sure of that. The words landed hard, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Truth has a way of stripping things bare, leaving nothing to hide behind. You're punishing us, she said, her voice trembling now. After everything we've done for you, for me, I asked quietly, or because of me. Adam slammed the folder shut. You're tearing this family apart. I felt a familiar ache in my chest, not guilt, but grief, the kind that comes from realizing the thing. Your mourning has been gone longer than you thought. I didn't tear anything apart, I said. I stopped pretending it was whole. They stared at me as if seeing me for the first time, not as their mother, not as a fragile woman they could manage, but as something inconvenient. A woman who had chosen herself. Livia shook her head slowly. You'll regret this. You're burning bridges. I nodded. Some bridges were built so I'd never cross back. Adam laughed bitterly. So what now? You cut us out. I stepped out. I replied, there's a difference. The silence stretched, heavy. Final dot. They left soon after. No shouting, no apologies, just stiff movements and doors closing too carefully, like people afraid of making noise in a house that no longer belongs to them. When their cars disappeared down the road, the house exhaled. So did I. The next morning felt strange, not lighter, not happier but clearer, as if fog had lifted and the edges of everything sharpened. I walked through each room slowly, touching the furniture, the walls, the memories, not with sadness, but with acknowledgement. By noon, the last documents were finalized. Adam and Livia were officially removed from any authority over my life, my health, my home. The law now recognized what I had always known. I was still capable, still present, still mine. I sat on the porch that afternoon, wrapped in my coat, watching the pear tree sway in the winter breeze. Henry planted it the year Adam was born, roots deep, trunk scarred, still standing. That night, I packed a single box. Photographs. Letters. Henry's old cardigan. I wasn't running. I was choosing. As I sealed the box, my phone buzzed with one final message from Adam. You think you've won, but you don't understand what you've done. I looked at the screen for a long moment, and then I smiled, because the truth, the one that would finally make sense of everything, was still waiting to be told. The place from the beginning, the one that never left me, was quieter than I. Remembered. White walls, pale floor, the low hum of machines breathing for people who had forgotten how. I stood in the hallway again, my coat folded neatly over my arm, my shoes aligned perfectly with the edge of the tile. Order has always calmed me. It was the only thing I controlled back then. The door at the end of the hall was still there, same number, same metal handle, same small window that never quite showed what was happening inside. This was the image that opened the story, the woman standing alone, the door that mattered. Now, finally, it was time to understand why. I hadn't come for forgiveness. I hadn't come for revenge. I came for closure. Inside the room sat the woman who taught me my first lesson about silence, my mother. She was smaller now, fragile in ways she never allowed herself to be when I was a child. Her eyes flickered toward me, uncertain, searching my face like it might explain why I'd waited so long. She smiled weakly. Margaret. Yes, I said. I sat beside her bed. The machine beeped softly, steady and indifferent. When I was a girl, she used the same words my children used on me. You don't remember things correctly. You're too sensitive. We know what's best for you. When my father died, they told me she needed help managing things. I was 16 when I watched her sign papers she didn't understand. 18 when she was moved into care temporarily. 20, when I realized temporary had no intention of ending. Stood outside this same door decades ago while adults whispered decisions that erased her voice. I remembered thinking, if I ever grow old, I won't let this happen to me. That promise shaped my entire life, even when I didn't realize it. My children didn't invent this story. They inherited it. I reached for my mother's hand. It was light, breakable. I didn't forget you, I said softly. I was learning how not to disappear. Her eyes filled with tears, maybe from recognition, maybe from regret, maybe from something that no longer mattered. "I'm not here to stay," I continued. "I just needed to tell you. I didn't let it happen again." When I left the room, the door closed behind me, not with fear this time, but with peace. Weeks later, my life looked different. Smaller house, new routines, quiet mornings chosen instead of imposed. Adam stopped calling. Livia sent one letter short, polite, distant. That was okay. Some lessons don't reunite families, they free people. I planted a new tree outside my window. Pears again. Roots matter. And when people ask me now why I fought so hard, why I refused to be managed, diminished, rewritten, I tell them this: aging is not a crime, clarity is not aggression, and obedience does not equal love. The door they thought would close my life was the one that finally taught me how to keep it. Sometimes the greatest act of love, especially later in life, is refusing to disappear quietly. Your voice does not expire with age, and no one gets to rewrite your story while you're still breathing.